Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. We're going to wait a few more minutes until everyone else is able to go ahead and get on the meeting, and then we'll get started. All right, as a few more people are joining, we will go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for joining us for this first webinar in the Thrive Not Survive series, Web Meetings 101. We really hope that this series will help you continue to move forward through these crazy times. So just like the title says, thriving and not surviving, even though we are all facing some crazy challenges right now. So we know that there are a really wide range when it comes to remote work of those challenges. And during Web Meetings 101, we want to hit on those foundational pieces, but then also add some tips and tricks for the more advanced user. If you have questions throughout this webinar, we ask that you use the questions and answers function, and that you go ahead and just type those in, and we'll get to those at the end, and we'll address all questions at the end of this webinar. We will share the recording when we're done, and get you guys what you need there. And without further ado, I will let Derek Watson, our Director of Microsoft Services, take over from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Callie. So as Callie mentioned, again, my name is Derek. I'm the Director of the Microsoft Solutions Practice here at Calendly. I'm based out of the St. Louis office here. We also have an Indianapolis office as well. But my background, I've been in IT consulting for over 20 years now and worked for a lot of the key accounts here in the St. Louis market, as well as some across the nation through my consulting days. And some of my passions are really focused on emerging technology, productivity enhancements and tools, and also building technology community. So before we get started, I would like to take a quick poll of everybody to kind of see where you are at on your remote work journey. So we're going to switch over here. So on the screen, you'll see if you could grab your mobile device and open that up and send a text to 22333 with one of those 4 codes on the screen. And that'll give us a understanding of kind of where everybody's coming from when it comes to remote work. We'll leave that open here for just a couple minutes. There we go. We see our results coming in here. So again, our question is, prior to March this year, or prior to the current stay-at-home orders, what best describes you when it comes to working remote? Have you never worked remotely before? Have you worked remotely on occasion, but usually just appointment-based or need-based? Do you have a regular work from home schedule where you're working home a specific number of days a week? Or are you classified as a full-time remote worker? Give it about 30 more seconds to get those answers in. Looks like the overwhelming majority of you have worked from home on occasion, but it's not a regular occurrence. All right. Well, again, our results haven't changed much. So again, like I said, it looks like quite a few of us have done this from time to time. Again, part of the reason I created this series is because I've been doing this. I've been working from home on some capacity for the last 20 years now, based upon the technology that the companies that I had provided, and just over that course of time, I've accumulated some good tips and tricks, and then now more so than ever, it's good to kind of share those with people so they can get an understanding of how to maximize their web meeting experience and their working from home experience. All right, we'll leave that open, but we're going to go ahead and switch back to the presentation. We can check on that at the end of the presentation as well. So let's talk about a brief history of remote work, or work in general, but also the history of remote work. So again, going all the way back to the pre-industrial revolutionary era, again, most people, if you think about it, most people worked out of their homes already. Again, they're blacksmiths, they're carpenters, they're farmers, they're leather workers. So everybody kind of started out at home in the beginning of this journey of work. And then during the Industrial Revolution, there came a need for automation and creation of these factories to produce massive amounts of things. So again, it required people to go into a place to do their job, which was kind of the start of the coining of the phrase workplace, right? And eventually, we kind of come along to post-World War II, when the economy started to boom, and we saw the rise of corporate headquarters along with larger office spaces, and again, with the birth of the cubicle and the 8-hour workday. And again, this is where we kind of started settling into what we consider the normal practice for today, which is, again, we go to an office, we sit down at a desk, we do a job from 8 to 5. But in the late 90s, early 2000s was the birth of the information age. And again, obviously with the extremely rapid growth in technology and innovation, along with the birth of the internet, it paved the way for people to be able to work and do their jobs much more outside of those office walls than they had to before. So again, interestingly enough, it seems we've kind of come full circle in the last 300 years. So again, as the information age is upon us, we've kind of seen the birth of this concept called the modern workplace. And the term modern workplace refers to the evolution of behaviors, culture, and technology that we use in business every day. Some of those traditional behaviors, or the traditional workplace behaviors we talk about, really focus around using email as a primary communication tool, looking at traditional office spaces. So again, having an office that you go to every day, a physical office location, and really the 9 to 5 schedule that going in at a certain set time during the day and then coming home at a set time during the day and leaving your work at the office. So when we talk about what a modern workplace looks like, there's some key characteristics that are involved there. First and foremost is a mobile workforce. And again, this modern workplace concept has been evolving over the years, but it's relatively new. But again, the key cornerstone of the mobile workforce is having web meetings, right? We also talk about how they can collaborate effectively. They're smarter with their data. They believe in open and transparent communication, and they utilize modern tools. So again, we're looking under the lens of how how we can support this modern workplace using these tools and the web meetings that we're going to be talking about today. So as we get started, again, we're going to start with the basics. So let's talk about what you must have to have a successful web meeting from outside of the office. And there's some key basics here. So ultimately, you have to have some device. You have to have a computer, a laptop, or even a phone or mobile device to join that meeting. Ideally, you want to have a computer or a laptop. So again, if somebody's going to be sharing content or going to be sharing their video, you want to be able to see that. Obviously, to be able to connect those devices, we have to have a decent internet connection. It always helps to have a clean work surface and a comfortable chair, because again, now that people have transitioned to working from home, they realize the value in ergonomics and working in a clean, quiet, comfortable location. So those are some of the basics that you must have to get started. Let's talk about the next level. Like, what are some things that really make that an enjoyable experience, or can make it a much better experience for both the people presenting and also the people receiving that information? So some of the nice to haves are things like multiple monitors. So right now I have 2 large monitors on my desk in addition to my laptop that allows me to show you one screen of what I'm seeing, and also have another screen where I can do other activities or keep the webinar flowing smoothly. Another really nice to have is a noise canceling headset. So as open offices become more of the norm, we've acquired at Cadelnet, we've acquired noise canceling headsets so that we have much better audio quality, but we also aren't disrupted by people around us talking on the phones. And again, that transition is really nice to the house. For example, if a dog is barking or if somebody is outside mowing the yard, that kind of gets filtered out. Fourth is having a nice web camera. So again, most devices, whether it be a phone or laptops, have a built-in webcam. But again, if you want to take it up a notch, you can get a nice high-definition web camera. Unfortunately, due to the quarantine, a lot of those supplies have been limited online or through vendors. But again, having a nice high-definition web camera really helps out when you're presenting on meetings and be able to see faces and expressions and working together visually. Another nice to have is a whiteboard. And again, you think about using whiteboards at work, or maybe you have a paper chart that you work on at work. It could be digital, it could be analog, but again, having a place to kind of write down and jot down ideas as you're going through meetings. And again, now that we're all at home, we are each in our own individual little conference rooms technically. So it's nice to have a place to kind of write those things down. If it's a pad of paper, great, but there's also tools like digital whiteboards, or I have a physical whiteboard on the wall behind me that I can write things down and kind of show different architectures or diagrams. And then lastly, again, a nice to have, some people would say it's a requirement, is having a private workspace with good acoustics and natural lighting. And again, natural lighting is really important, because again, it helps with the visuals again on the webcam. But there's other things you can do as well, some nice tips. For example, I unfortunately, the room that I'm in, my office, I don't have any windows or access to natural lighting. So I went out to Harbor Freight and purchased an inexpensive LED work light. And I have that throwing light on the wall behind me or in front of me, so it illuminates things. So again, little things you can do to kind of enhance that experience and make it look better. If I didn't do that, otherwise I would be very dark. People wouldn't be able to see me. So again, some little tips and tricks to kind of make that experience both better for you and also other people on the other end of the line as well. So we talked about kind of like the hardware requirements and the things that you need to kind of get started in your workspace. Well, let's talk about the platform, because that's the other key component. And what are the tools that we would use to have these web meetings? So obviously there's a lot of options out there. And again, before, a couple months ago, few people had heard about Zoom. People may have used GoToMeeting or WebEx or even Microsoft Teams or Microsoft Skype. There's a lot of different platforms out there. But again, the ones I've listed here are pretty much the key kind of ones that most people are using today. But if your organization hasn't selected one vendor for a web meeting platform, or perhaps you have multiple options, I wanted to kind of go over some of the reasons or some of the things we look at when we're trying to decide what platform to go forward with. And some of those key things are usability. So we want to make sure that it's easy to use. So obviously, a lot of you guys work for companies that may not be IT focused. So we want to make sure that the IT solutions are accessible to all the people within your organization, whether they are seasoned veterans of IT, or they are maybe somebody in accounting, or possibly a frontline worker that doesn't have a lot of experience with IT. They need to be able to use these tools equally well. We also want to talk about features. So again, we've seen things for platforms, different types of features, whether it be hosting webinars or having multiple video options on screen, or hiding the background. And again, we've seen a huge rush of innovation in the last couple months, because again, everybody has gone outside the office, and we're seeing a lot of different features being pushed very quickly. So again, taking a look at which features these platform has, and marrying those to what you need in your organization. The third thing is security. So security is very important, obviously. We made a big rushed move to go from home, from the office, and sometimes people, they didn't have any sort of web meeting tool in place, so they're trying to grab at these tools and get these set up very quickly. But understanding the security involved, because again, what we don't want to happen is people go home, they set up these meetings, they get comfortable using it, they transition back to the office and keep using them, but then they get comfortable doing things like having board meetings or having private meetings through these platforms. And again, making sure that the platform that you choose has the appropriate security for your organization, and so that you do not lose any sort of IP or open yourself up to unnecessary risk. The fourth is cost. Obviously, each of these tools come at a cost. They're different models and different things that they have, but also to the fifth bullet point is extensibility. They have different features and extensibility as well. So again, you may pay for a tool that just does web meetings, or you may pay for a tool that does a lot of other things as well. And I think that's a good segue, because what I want to talk about just for one slide is why we at GoodellNet chose Microsoft Teams. So again, I'm not going to make this a commercial for Teams, but there's some key reasons why we chose Teams, and we encourage our customers to utilize Microsoft Teams. And one of the main reasons is, as part of the Office 365 licensing SKU, Teams is included in most every license that our customers utilize. So again, it's just rolled into that package that they're already paying for. But Microsoft is positioning Teams as the hub for teamwork. So in addition to the powerful online meeting experience, we also have a lot of capabilities around one-to-one, group, and persistent chat. We have capabilities around enterprise calling and voice features. We can actually use it as a front end for a file management system. And then there's deep extensibility and integration points, whether you want to integrate it with your current line of business systems or write custom applications to run within Teams. So again, Teams is more than just a web meeting platform or web meeting interface. It's an entire platform that you can build your business upon. And that's why Microsoft recommends that for our customers. So let's talk about the basics. So again, if you're coming to this meeting and you've never joined a web meeting before March, or perhaps you're still fairly uncertain on how this whole thing goes, or you're still kind of tentative on how you join meetings, I want to walk through some things that are going to get you the best amount of value very quickly. So one of the things I always recommend to our clients is make sure you hold practice meetings. So if you're not familiar with the user interface, you're not familiar with where the mute button is, or where the video button is, or how to chat in the meeting, or how to share your screen, definitely leverage these tools, and don't be afraid to set up practice meetings. This will allow you to get experience, it'll get you comfortable with it, so that you're not trying to fumble along when you're presenting to a client or you're presenting to somebody within your organization. The second thing, which dovetails really nicely into the first one, is join the meetings early. So again, even though you're familiar with the tool or you've used it before, it's always a good idea to jump in the meeting early, so that again, you can make sure that the audio, the video, everything's working appropriately, and everything's set up correctly. The third thing is more of a process thing. It's not really around the technology, but again, as you transition away from the physical office building, you've had processes around how you run your meetings. So make sure you keep that structure to your meetings. Don't let the technology dictate how the meetings are run. Keep the structure to your meetings. So when I say that, I mean do things like make sure you keep clear agendas, take notes, take action items, drive it towards an outcome. Again, I know it's very interesting and it's very fun as we start doing these web meetings and look at video and look at audio and all the different content sharing options we have. Sometimes we kind of go off topic or have a tangent. But again, at the end of the day, we're here to accomplish a task. So make sure you keep those structured to those meetings. And again, and sometimes you can you can support that by, again, adding agenda to your meeting invites, or making sure somebody on the call is actually the secretary, or pushing that meeting forward to drive towards those action items. The fourth one is arguably the most important one for me, and that is, you know, again, if you're coming from transitioning from an office and you haven't really utilized web meetings before, you may feel more comfortable jumping on a phone call, dialing that phone number, as opposed to jumping on via your computer. I heavily encourage you to use your computer for these meetings, even if it's a little bit of a push or a stretch for you technologically, because again, you're going to miss out on content that's shared. You're going to miss out on video that's shared. You're going to miss out on the collaborative features of chat. It's just really going to limit your meeting experience if you're only joining via audio. And then in addition to that, one of the other biggest tips that I provide our customers with is when you join it via your computer, don't just open up your laptop and join the meeting. Even though there is a microphone and speaker in that laptop, just grab a nearby headset and mic that you have. You don't have to go out and buy a $300 one. Yeah, it's nice, the noise canceling ones with a boom mic like I show here in the picture, which is what I'm using right now. Those are great. But you could just use your earpods from your iPhone or whatever Android device you have. Those have built-in microphones. Those have good quality audio. And if you've noticed recently, as we transition to home, and a lot of the national television programs, the live interview things, you notice everybody has their earpod or their AirPods in their ears because they work really well. They don't need to have expensive boom mics or any of that sort of stuff. Those AirPods work really well to get the audio and to transition through the meeting. So again, grab a headset, again, experiment, hold those practice meetings, test out the audio. But that's going to be the one of the biggest things, because I can't tell you how frustrating it is to join a meeting and have a endless echo loop because somebody's got their volume turned up too loud on their computer and they're talking and there's a feedback loop and you can't get anything done. And then last but not least, if you have quality issues with your audio or any quality issues whatsoever, first thing to go is video. I mean, obviously we want to make sure we encourage people to use video because now more than ever, they need to see interaction with other people and they need to be social. But again, if you live in a remote area, you're having a tough time with your internet connection, definitely kill the video first, because again, we could still have audio, we can still do screen sharing. So those are some basics. Again, the things that I would recommend out of the gate if you're new to joining web meetings or you're having some challenges. Those are the things the tips that I would recommend, right out of the gate. So let's talk about some advanced things when it comes to doing web meetings. So one of the tips that I have the most, and this isn't necessarily related to the specific web meeting tool set or even the meetings themselves, but again, one of the most challenging processes when it comes to coordinating meetings is coordinating schedules, especially with people outside of your organization. So if you use a tool like Microsoft Exchange, you can always look at somebody else's calendar within your organization to kind of coordinate a time where everybody's free. But if you want to have a meeting with somebody outside your organization, that's a little bit more difficult. So there's some tools out there. Specifically, Microsoft has a tool called Find Time. There's tools like Calendly and some other tools that will allow you to, there's social organizational tools where you can broadcast and say, I want to have a meeting about this with these 5 people, and it'll go out there and collaboratively look at their calendars and come up with a time that meets everybody's needs. So again, that's a nice little tip as we transition to more digital meetings to try and get those schedules coordinated with the least amount of back and forth via email. Another tip is record a meeting and to play back later. So some people are a little bit skittish when it comes to meeting recordings because, again, they're like, well, now the stuff that I say is going to be recorded forever, and what if, there's a lot of reasons why they may not want that to happen. However, it is a very powerful tool, and I definitely recommend it, especially in situations where we need to remember something, or, for example, like this webinar, or maybe a sales presentation where you want to reuse that content and play that back later. It's a fantastic tool that comes with most of these platforms that you can record that thing and then you can publish it via some mechanism back to the audience participants. So this is a big one, and again, this is something that sometimes sneaks up on people that haven't done web meetings before. But if you're ever presenting or ever sharing your screen, just be really careful. I think there's a lot of horror stories, or sometimes hopefully they're just funny stories, but of people sharing their screen and things pop up whether it be an instant message from somebody or perhaps something they didn't want other people to see on the screen, or maybe they're browsing Amazon on one monitor and they're on the meeting on the other monitor. So just be careful. So I recommend doing things like closing out of all your applications. If you have a really messy desktop with a lot of icons on it, you can just create a temporary folder and just move all those icons to that to keep it clean. Doing things like setting yourself to do not disturb, whether it be in your phone or your instant messaging client, so people don't message you while you do that. But again, just some basic tips on just kind of best practice around making sure you don't embarrass yourself or have something happen during a meeting that you don't want to happen. And speaking of embarrassing, another tool that's kind of made its prevalence in the last couple months is using background filters for video calls. So again, we saw a couple of years ago that the gentleman on the left on a news program and was presenting on a very serious topic, and then his kids ran in the room and then his nanny ran in the room to retrieve them. And actually that was the genesis of some ideas for a lot of these video web meeting platforms to create background filters. So those background filters allow you to make it look like you're anywhere. And the technology is really good to the point where I took a picture of my desk at the office before we went home for the quarantine, and now I present with that. And a lot of times people can't tell the difference whether I'm at the office or at home. So the other nice thing about that is if somebody comes in behind you, whether it be a child or somebody like that, they can't really see that. So again, you can mute yourself or you can turn the video off before anything happens. You can go address it and then come back. So again, a very powerful tool that's in a lot of these modern web meeting platforms. I encourage you to kind of explore that and take a look at it and see what's out there. So just some additional tips that we have for people just in general. So again, it's kind of a joke, but yeah, make sure you're presentable from the top up for sure. And I say that meaning more than just again, make sure you dress up while you're working from home, but the other thing too is you never know when somebody's going to want to pop on a video call, or during the day you're going to get a presentation with a client. So if you're used to you're working from home in shorts and a t-shirt, that's fine. And again, maybe your culture is okay with that. But make sure you have it's always good to make sure you're at least presentable from the top up. So in case you get pulled into one of those video calls, you're ready to go. You don't have to bow out because you haven't shaved in 3 weeks. This is another tip that a lot of people don't realize, but again, VPNs are a great tool. It allows us to connect back to our remote file servers or other applications. Make sure you disconnect from those when you're not using them. If you're just going to be joining a web meeting, you don't have to be on the VPN, or if you're not actively utilizing the VPN, because what that does is it taxes your company's infrastructure, and it's taking up a spot for somebody else possibly to get on and work with that stuff. So in the scope of web meetings, if you're doing a web meeting, you're not actually actively working on the file server, make sure you disconnect when you're doing those things. Another common sense kind of tip is coordinating the important meetings with your family and housemates. So again, before I jumped on the call today, I made sure I went and had a chat with the family and said, hey, I'm going to be presenting today. If you wouldn't mind, but maybe it's a good time to go take a walk or run out to the store or something. So again, if you have important meetings, make sure you coordinate with those people around you just to make sure things are okay. And lastly, this is something that's kind of come out of, I've worked from home for quite a while, and I've always had this idea, but I never worked from home enough where I took the time to implement it. But the idea is to create a do not disturb indicator. It can be something as simple as a Post-it note on a door or a piece of paper on a door, but there's a lot of technology out there that do some cool stuff very easily. So for example, I use Wi-Fi enabled light bulbs, and they happen to be color changing light bulbs. So all I did was I set up a thing with using our Amazon Alexa that says, hey Alexa, set the warning light to red. And when I say that, it turns the light on upstairs red. And then all they have to do is take a quick glance over and they say, oh, Dad's on a call. Let's make sure that we keep it down, or we probably shouldn't go bother him and ask him for lunch or Xbox time or what have you. So again, quick little tips on just how to kind of streamline how those meetings are, those web meetings are going to flow while you're in the time of working from home or working remotely. So that kind of wraps up all of our content today. Again, this was meant to be kind of a good overview for people that have never worked with online meetings or have had challenges getting started, all the way to providing some tips that hopefully some people that have been doing this for a while but maybe sat back and said, you know what, that's a good idea. We do have some time today available for questions, so make sure you post your questions in the Q&A. But real quick before we get started with that, I just wanted to give a brief shout out to my employer, GoodellNet. Again, a lot of you guys are customers of ours. Some of you aren't, but again, we really enjoy powering our customers' missions every single day through outsourced IT, through optimization, through security, through a help desk. But for my practice, falls under the strategic services arm of us. So our digital, really focusing on digital transformation and helping you get the most out of these tools like Microsoft Teams and really the Microsoft Suite, and helping you create that modern workplace environment. And so if you have any needs in that area, again, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn at Derek C. Watson. You can email me directly at derek.watson@goodellnet.com, or feel free to give me a call on the number on the slide. So Callie, how are we looking in the chat? Do we have any questions that need to be answered?
We do have a few. Bob asked, what is the suggested internet or bandwidth speed for full audio and video meeting participants? Okay,
that's a great question, and unfortunately, that's not really an easy answer, because there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. I think the easiest answer is get the most internet you can afford, really, especially in times like this when we're all at home and we're all working on things. I've got 3 kids upstairs that are all doing e-learning. They're on Zoom calls. When they're not doing that, they're on Netflix, or they're on Xbox, or they're doing all sorts of other activities. So again, get the most that you can afford, or most that's available to you. So again, ideally looking at things like digital cable, like through Spectrum or Charter, or possibly even fiber internet if you have it available to you. That's even another great option as well. And again, to that end, if you're having struggles in that area and maybe you don't have access to high-speed internet or have that bandwidth available to you, again, doing things like mitigating that on the front end by coordinating times with your family where they're not off those things, or investing possibly in some higher-end mesh Wi-Fi network systems for your house that kind of help distribute that internet a little bit better, broadcast it further within your house. There's a lot of different things you can do on the home level to get that done. But again, at the end of the day, it all comes down to your bandwidth pipe. And I would get it the most that you can afford and that's available to you for sure, especially during these times where you're going to be at home quite a bit. That's a great question.
Yeah, so Bob has another great question.
Sure.
This has to do with recordings. So he wants to know where recordings are stored. Are there maximum times or sizes that can be stored, and the retention period of recordings?
Great, fantastic question. So again, those are going to depend on the platform. And again, all those things are documented. It's going to depend on the platform and also the settings as well. So again, platforms like Office 365 and Microsoft Teams allow us to set specific policies at the highest level. So we can say at an organizational level that we can dictate what that looks like, or we can just say we're going to leave those settings off. So those are going to vary between the different platforms. What I will do is I'll get the information together, kind of what the broad strokes are on Microsoft Teams, and we can send those out with the kind of the follow-up notes in the presentation deck.
Perfect. So Clark has a question. He says that using VPN is new, and he would love some clarification on when it should be disconnected.
Sure. So that's going to be a company by company decision, and it really comes down to what resources you need off that VPN. So understanding what you use your VPN for. So for example, a lot of organizations use VPN for file access, accessing their on-premise file servers. And in that case, if you need a file from the file server, you should jump on the VPN, work with that file, and jump off. If you're using it for other line of business systems, or perhaps an RS-400 or some connected application that is, again, tied to your physical office location that you can't expose externally, that's where you're going to be using that VPN system. So it's going to be one of those things you're going to have to work with your IT folks to understand which tools are really you have to be connected for the VPN. And again, I think the whole reason I gave that advice was because a lot of people don't know. They just connect to their VPN and say, okay, I'm good for the day. And again, when in normal circumstances, when they're just working from home, maybe one day a week or just for an appointment, it's not a really big deal. But now that everybody's working from home, there's definitely a traffic jam when people are trying to get on the VPN. So that's going to be a very individual question to your organization. But typical activities are, if you're accessing an intranet exposed externally, if you're accessing files that are on a on-premise file server, or really any sort of applications that are hosted on-premise, that's when you would target that. And to tie that all together, one of the things that we try to drive towards in a modern workplace is pushing our applications to the cloud and pushing out all of our technology to the cloud. And for that reason alone is to make it accessible to remote workers, make it accessible outside the VPN, while still having it be, delivered securely and efficiently. Great question, Clark.
Great. So just a couple more questions that we have right now. How do you elicit audience participation during web meetings?
Sure, that's a great question as well. And again, I think that it's a cultural thing. It's a thing that's changed as we've gone to, like, everybody's doing remote or web meetings versus some people were doing it and some people weren't. There's a couple tips that I have. Again, obviously, I did one of the tips during this presentation, and that's incorporate a poll, incorporate something that's going to get feedback or that's going to have action by the participants. Other ways, though, it really depends upon the size of the meeting. If you have a small audience, if you keep those audiences small in those meetings, you're going to have better engagement because people are going to feel more obligated to talk, and they're going to be more willing to present their, show their webcam and be on video. But I think also the other thing too that I've seen is a trend that's kind of emerging is that don't be afraid just to call on people. Again, set that expectation up front whenever you have that meeting and say, hey, we're gonna make sure that everybody's engaged in this meeting. We're gonna ask specific people questions, and we're gonna call them out and get their opinion and account for that time. But make it happen. Again, if you have a large number of people, it's really hard to get everybody's opinions and everybody's thoughts into the meeting. So schedule some time and say, okay, we're going to mute everybody out. We're going to go around the room one at a time and just get feedback from each individual person. And sometimes it's that easy. Sometimes you just have to go direct to those people and extract that information. Because again, one of the challenges, especially when there's no video and you don't see the people's faces, people can get lost in that meeting and they don't really get their voice heard, or perhaps they're shy or they're not comfortable with the technology. And again, this is a way to kind of get those people outside of their bubble and make sure that they get their opinions heard.
Great. So it looks like we just have one more question. If you were to spend on one thing to improve your work from home or web meeting experience, what would you spend a little money on?
Wow, that's a great question. For me personally, it may differ from a lot of different people, and again, their situation. But let's just say you're starting out with just a laptop and you're sitting at a desk, right? You've got nothing else. I think one of the things that I have to have is an external monitor, and to go past that, 2 external monitors. So again, I have 2 external large monitors that I can see a lot of content on. I can be presenting on one and working on something on the other. To me, that's a requirement for me to be able to work from home. But again, I'm in IT. I've got specific things that I do. I think secondarily, or just right in line with that, is what I talked about in the presentation as well, which is having a good quality headset with a microphone. And again, whether it be earbuds, whether it be a noise canceling, whatever that looks like, just having something that I can use during the meeting. So I'm not worried about my audio quality. I'm not worried about echoing. The people on the other end of the line hear me well. And again, I can hear them well in addition to that. So those are the things I would probably start out first. And again, that kind of transitions to the thing where if you start getting into video calls, and again, like I said, having auxiliary lighting, having anything from having a couple extra lights in the room or having good lighting in a room or natural lighting in a room to investing in, again, you can go and find, photographer type light boxes and things that you can use to really illuminate, what it looks like on your video feed. So hopefully that helps. That's a really broad question for a lot of different people, but those are the things that me personally, I couldn't live without.
All right, great. If you have any other questions, I'll give you guys just a few more minutes maybe for the Q&A. Oh, looks like we do have one more. Shannon would like to know, do I need a docking station to use an external monitor with my laptop?
Great question, and I think that's a big misconception. I think that one of the things is whenever you have a laptop, a lot of them have external video outputs on them. So if you look at that, and again, common one is HDMI because you're very familiar with that because that's on your TV. There's a lot of different outputs though. So you do not have to have a dock for most laptops or devices, but again, it's kind of helps out. And again, the thing that dock provides is a lot of times that dock will give you the ability to have multiple monitors, whether it be 2 or 3 monitors hooked up. And it also allows you to quickly detach your laptop and walk out of the room and go to a meeting or something like that. So it provides that portability. But yeah, not a requirement for sure. Again, a lot of laptops have it. But if your specific laptop doesn't have it, and again, let's say you have a bare bones laptop that only has perhaps a USB port, there are either video extender or docking options for those types of situations as well, where you can get a generic USB dock that will also mirror video as well. And the video is not going to be as good a quality as it would be perhaps for an official dock for your laptop. But again, for people that are working from home that just want a temporary solution, or they just want to upgrade their experience a little bit, that's something else you can look at. Great questions.
Yeah, we do have another question that came through.
Okay.
Yeah, what are the names of the scheduling apps?
Yep. So Microsoft has one called Find Time, FINDTIME, and it's really it's a tool that kind of bolts onto your Office 365, but it is provided by Microsoft, and it's kind of I say it's a social meeting schedule tool in that you get to propose, you as the scheduler get to propose a handful of times, and it can you broadcast that out to the participants, and they get to vote on those times, and they can either say this is a great time, this is an okay time, or I can't do this time. And basically what it does is it comes back and says, okay, here's the results we gathered. It looks like this is the best time for your meeting, and you can just schedule it. Some other tools, Microsoft provides a tool called Microsoft Bookings, which is more focused around service industry clients. And in Bookings, you can actually use that to schedule meetings with clients. But you can also take payment. You can also offer services through that as well. And then the other one I talked about was called Calendly. And Calendly is similar to Find Time. And again, it's just it's a tool that allows you to work with external parties and try to synchronize calendars to get a common meeting time where everybody's available.
Great.
Good questions.
We have not had any other questions come through. I may just wait just a few more seconds to see if anyone else has a follow-up question. While
we're waiting, again, if anybody has any further questions or comments, or would like to talk more about this stuff, or would like to understand how you guys can better leverage these tools and technology at your work, feel free to reach out to me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Reach out to me via phone or email. I love talking about this stuff. Again, I'm very passionate about this stuff. I love doing stuff for the community as well. So again, feel free to reach out with your questions, your comments, what you'd like to see in future webinars as well. And that's also a point I'd like to make too, Callie. We do have 3 more webinars coming up in this series where we talk about other things, like we talk about specifically, we focus on etiquette. So again, how people, kind of the proper etiquette for attending, creating, and working in meetings, web meetings. We'll talk about some more advanced topics as well. So again, make sure you join us for the rest of the webinar series. I think you're going to find that it's going to be hopefully as beneficial as this one was.
Perfect. Yeah, we didn't have any other questions come through. So I will just go ahead and wrap up by saying thank you to everyone for joining. Thank you so much for your wonderful questions. Very illuminating. We hope that you've really enjoyed this first webinar in our series. As Derek mentioned, we will have 3 more webinars, so you can keep an eye out for those invitations. We will share out this recording with you guys later on today, but that's it for us. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you again.
Yep. Thank you for joining. Take care.